Yo, 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 hello, and welcome back to the Lenko show. This is episode number 94, and I am feeling fresh, energized, ready to go. I've just been in the gym, just finished training today. Actually done 2 sessions, managed to drove over to Manchester Titans practice all the way from Wales, and then have been in the garage getting a workout in on the assault bike for about 45 minutes. So I am feeling absolutely mint. And what I want to go through today is something that I might have mentioned this on a couple of the previous episodes, which is very, very prominent across every single athlete, every single person, every single human being has this particular problem at some stage to varying degrees. It's something that I've certainly had to overcome. Anytime you're faced with a bit of a challenge, bit of an adversity, this definitely comes to the forefront, and it is your deepest, darkest fear. Not necessarily yours per se, but this is one of those innate fears that is built into us, which it can be extremely traumatizing should we fail in certain circumstances, whether the consequences are social, monetary, relationship based. It can be horrendous. So what I'm going to do, this is going to be essentially a bit of a two part show. So this is part one, and we're going to go into why people actually fear failing. And at the end, I'm going to give you a few little things that you can work on to overcome it, or highlight a few things that we're going to speak about in the next episode. And I think it's really important to get a handle on this, because fear of failure is far worse than failure itself, because it kills off the possibilities. Any situation that I've been in that I can think of where I've attempted something and failed, it's never actually been that bad. Yeah, it's been horrendous in the moment. I mean, for me, perfect examples are kicking field goals in big games. Thankfully, I haven't missed too many of those. Um, but every time you step out on the field, every time you're in that moment, for it in football, it might be missing a penalty. There is an expectation in that moment, regardless of the occasion, the level, the circumstances, the conditions, the environment. There is an expectation every time you step foot on the field and attempt that particular kick that you are going to make the kick or you're going to score. And it doesn't matter who it's against. If you miss, it's horrendous. And a lot of the times you'll know as soon as you strike the ball, as soon as you start to execute your skill, you know it's gone wrong. And all you want is you want it back. You just want to reverse it, press rewind, pull the ball back down, and go again. So what we need to do is we need to overcome these barriers that are getting in the way from us performing the skill and executing the skill, to be able to at least make attempts, at least stretch ourselves and push ourselves a little bit further. And the first step in doing that is actually understanding failure in itself. So it's a very common, it's a natural emotion, stems from various factors, whether it's psychological, social, cultural, could be upbringing, and understanding these underlying reasons will provide us with insights on how we can then address it, manage it, work around it, work through it, dance with it. Again, one of the great analogies that I've heard is like the more you fight fear, the more it grips a hold of you and the more it starts to throw you around. Whereas if you embrace it and you dance with it and you accept the reality of failure and the possibilities within it, and the reality that failure is, very common, and you're not necessarily expected to succeed 100% of the time, and it will not define you as a person. It is not going to define your life. It's not going to have written on your gravestone or your tombstone or your statue that he did loads of amazing shit, but he failed at whatever it is, X, Y, or Z. So let's start to work through it. Number one, perfectionism. Having the perfectionist mentality. If you adopt that, and every single thing has to be perfect every single time, you are going to beat yourself into submission and be extremely upset. Yes, we want high standards, high expectations, a high level of behaviors and input into executing the skill in the first place. But if you have those high expectations and high standards without the habits and without the behavioral background that underpins the skill you're trying to execute, then the reality of failure comes a lot closer itself. And the fear of it is also going to be a lot more alarming because you're less in control of your skill set. Your skill set is less reliable. It's like if you barely practiced kicking, or if you barely practiced free kicks, or if you barely practiced taking penalties, that fear of failure, when it comes to that moment, you think, shit, this is last minute preparation. We haven't done this before. We haven't prepared for this moment as an individual or as a team. The reality of that failure hitting you becomes a lot more prominent. So understand that you are going to make mistakes. There are going to be shortcomings. You're going to have moments of inadequacy, but don't allow that to pile on top of you. Understand that those are all ways in which you can get better. So don't think you have to be perfect at every single moment in every situation. The reality is we all fuck up now and again. We all make mistakes, and it's part of life. It is part of life. I used to be in the situation when it came to kicking field goals. I was watching the offense drive the ball down the field, and all of a sudden, like, you realize you're in field goal range, and your heart starts beating a little bit faster. You get a little bit anxious of, oof, don't really want to kick in these conditions, don't really want to kick in this direction. If the offense could just throw a touchdown, or you know make life really easy by getting incredibly close, then that would be lovely. In fact, actually, reality, some of the really close field goals are horrendous, because if you miss that, you just look like a complete donkey. You're almost better further away. But that was how I used to think anyway, whereas now it doesn't tend to bother me at all. One of the, I mean, I'll talk about this more in the second part of this, but one of the things, and one of the mental triggers, one of my mental self-talk, one of my mental verbology, not even sure if that's a thing, I might have just made that up. One of the things I say to myself is, fuck it, just kick it. Kicked the ball from that position thousands of times before, had plenty of success. There's no reason why this would be any different. And being able to use that and go, fuck it, just kick it. You let go of the fear and the anxiety that comes with it. And you understand that all it is just executing a skill. It's basic, it's simple. Nothing else matters. The circumstances don't matter. The pressure on the kick doesn't matter. It is literally a case of doing exactly what you've done in training thousands of times before, doing it one more time. The second part of that, and again, this is where self-pressure kicks in, is that you will have concerns over your self-esteem. And this is where that fear of failure can be linked to your self-worth, and you tie your sense of value, your identity, to the external achievement of being successful, of being successful. And then ultimately fearing that failure will lead to, well, or failing will simply lead to negative judgments from other people, could be pundits, could be teammates, could be coaches. And then that is going to confirm your beliefs about failure, and rightly so. So again, how do we let go of that? Well, first off, understand you build self-esteem by doing things which are extremely challenging for yourself. You have to overcome challenges and difficulties in the first place. You don't just go easy street, bang, I've got loads of self-esteem. Look at some of the people around the world, some of the people that I know who, they might have had a fairly comfortable, easy life, never really been challenged, never really had to do anything difficult for themselves. And as soon as they're faced with a task, bang, they crumble, they melt. So you build that resilience, you build that self-esteem, you build that confidence by exposing yourself to difficult situations in the first place, and realities and situations where failure is indeed entirely possible. You might even look a bit foolish going through it. It's one of the reasons why in team bonding, the whole idea is that you have a bit of a laugh around each other, because you understand that failure, looking a little bit silly, looking a little bit clumsy, leads to a safe environment. You realize that you can fail around each other. It's okay to try things. I remember reading something a while ago about Cristiano Ronaldo, who he wanted to practice specific skills and things that he'd not necessarily done before. But obviously, I assume that self-esteem would have been a part of this, and he didn't want people to see him failing. So what he'd do is take a bag of balls and he'd go over the hill at Carrington or the Cliff or wherever they were training at the time, and he'd practice on another pitch on his own after everyone else had gone out of the sight and the eye shot of anybody that might be there. And again, I've had similar situations where I'd rather be away, be by myself, practice things, and think, I will fail in private so that I don't damage my own reputation or people don't think badly of me, because I felt like that mattered at the time. That was how I felt. I just felt that that mattered. Whereas now, what I will do, regardless of situation, circumstances, whether it's at Manchester Titans or whether it's at Great Britain training, I will try different things, weird things, and obviously things that I'd not done before, or I will do things in a slightly different way, regardless of the consequences. Like, I don't care how it looks anymore. I'm beyond the point where I hit a bad ball and then someone might come out with a comment. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Like, I ultimately, in your head, if you know that you're trying something slightly different and you fuck it up, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You just go back to doing it the basic way, the way that you've done it, and work on certain things, because that's how you actually improve and that's how you get better. And this all feeds into a growth mindset, which, again, we'll talk about the opposite of that, the fixed mindset, a little bit later on. So fear of, well, ultimately the reasons for fear and failure. First off, perfectionism. Number two, concerns about your own self-esteem. Number three, social comparison. I'd spoken, did I do this in the last episode? About comparing ourselves to other people. Yeah, why you shouldn't compare yourself to other people. And again, this features quite heavily here. So obviously comparing yourself to others, particularly in these competitive environments, again, that can amplify the fear of failure and the desire to measure up to perceived standards of success set by your peers, your opponents, even the wider expectations of the audience. That can create more pressure, more anxiety, and ultimately more of an opportunity to fall short of your actual own expectations of yourself. And this is the big thing, where you need to have higher standards of yourself and hold yourself to higher standards than anybody would ever expect. So falling short is something that is only applicable to you as opposed to what anybody else thinks. Number four, negative consequences. So people fear these negative consequences. If you anticipate negative consequences like criticism, rejection, loss of status, and again, that filters back to self-esteem or social comparisons. These are all quite tightly linked. Again, there might be financial repercussions if you've potentially got contracts on the line, or if there is a bonus at stake. Then thinking about all these things will also increase the anxiety. They will increase the possibility of failure in your mindset. It's like saying, don't think of a pink elephant. As soon as I say, don't think of a pink elephant, you think of a pink elephant. As soon as I say, don't miss, don't drop it, you think about missing, you think about dropping it. So we need to change that mindset as well. And a lot of these perceived consequences could actually be based on past experiences, things that you've been through before, things that you might have been exposed to as a result of bad coaching. It could be societal norms. It could be the culture of the team where people get criticized and you're not allowed to fail. You're not allowed to try things. And this is where I see a lot of teams and individuals struggle, when you get put into a box or put in a cage that says you cannot mess up, you cannot perform badly. That is when people start to suffer, because they start to overthink every single thing. And as soon as you do that, it slows you down and you take yourself away from your natural game. And this is where you then experience, number five, a lack of control. And when you have that lack of control over the outcomes, the circumstances, when you believe that failure is beyond your control, or it might even be due to external factors and something that you have no influence over whatsoever, that's when you might also, again, experience an increased amount of anxiety and that sense of helplessness, which is, you do not want to be there at any point in your career as a performer at all. You always want to feel like you're in control, or you can control your own actions. And if you don't feel like you can do that, you are going to massively suffer. Next up, obviously, we always want to be in the pursuit of improvement, getting better, pushing ourselves, consistently adding to our self-esteem, resilience, and our mindset is a huge part of that. Excuse me. Again, if we've got a fixed mindset, if we have a fixed mindset, it all links back to believing that we, have a set skill set, a set of capabilities, and we're not able to change any of that. And if we have this and we have these beliefs that our intelligence, our traits are fixed, we have some specific limitations, and that is really, really going to hammer us. And we want to be able to see that by challenging ourselves, pushing ourselves, and potentially failing, we're then going to be able to grow in those areas and develop ourselves in those areas, as opposed to just sitting, staying put where we are, being scared of kind of exposing ourselves and putting ourselves out there for everybody to see. It's like if I, like, I know that I'm definitely not the world's best podcaster. By no stretch of the imagination do I think I'm even close. But do I believe I can get better as a podcaster? Yes. Do I believe I could get better as a kicker? Yes. Do I believe I can get better as a coach? Yes. But the only way I'm going to do that is by trying different things, trying new things, and consistently putting myself out there and exposing myself to situations where I can learn from those things and I can develop in those areas. So if you've got a fixed mindset, that is something we need to work on and change straight away. And again, a huge part of that is understanding that our capabilities are not fixed. So your mind shouldn't be. The next one, negative reinforcement. So another reason we might fear failure is if we have had it hammered into us again and again and again, if we've had past experiences which have featured harsh criticism, punishment, negative feedback, this will loop us back through to just ultimately being scared of going, do you know what? It's not really worth the hassle. I don't want to expose myself to that situation. I don't want to feel those feelings, those emotions. And that is a very slippery slope. So as coaches, you need to be very, very careful when you're dealing with feedback, especially for young players, but for any player, if you deliver it in the wrong way or in a manner that is going to be distressing. And I don't want to go down the road of going, we can't give honest feedback or we can't give, precise, like, ultimately, sorry, mate, that was shit. Like, you need to be able to say that again, but you have to know your athlete. You need to know the person you're working with before you're able to give, say, radical candor and that level of explicit feedback. And it can't just be a hammer in the entire time. Like, there might be times where, especially if you're limited for time in a halftime team talk, you might just have to say one or two things, be blunt, be to the point, and ultimately for the benefit of the team, how you then address that during the week and how you then fluff that out, pad it out, and go, right, this was the situation I didn't like. You did this. What you think? What I think you could have done is X, Y, and Z. Or you could even ask them for the possibilities of how could you have changed your game? How could you have done things differently to fit within the style of play or deliver what the team needs? So the way that you give feedback as a coach needs to be always specific to the individual. It needs to be fair. It needs to be clear, and they need to understand it. They have to be able to understand it and process it to be able to get better. And the frame for that is that any feedback you give, any feedback you receive as an athlete, you need to see it not as a personal attack. It's never a personal attack. I mean, well, say it's never a personal attack. I never take it personally. I never have taken it personally. And ultimately, like typically when people give me feedback, I already know where I've gone wrong. I already know what the problem was, and I've already come up with a plan on how to fix it. So whenever I hear it, it's nothing new. So if you can get yourself in the mindset of, I know that wasn't great, and ultimately be honest with yourself, I could have done better there. I could have done something different. If you get into that mindset of fixing these problems as they arise or before anyone else even addresses with the feedback isn't a shock. It's not going to stun you. It's not going to hurt you. It's not going to hit hard because you've already gone through the process. But understand that it's not a personal attack. It's always aimed at how to make you better, how to make you better, and how to get more out of the team. So frame the feedback that you give yourself. And if you're a coach and if you're someone who is responsible for giving feedback to a particular player or a particular team, make sure you frame it in the appropriate manner. If you're doing it for the sake of slapping the shit out of someone and knocking them senseless and upsetting them, you probably shouldn't be coaching. Pure and simple. If you're doing it, even in a harsh way, if you're doing it for the purpose of making the person better, making the team better, that's coaching. So make sure you frame your feedback in the correct manner. Number 8 on the list of why people fear failing is performance pressure. So if you've got high expectations of yourself or high expectations of external sources, coaches, crowd, teammates, parents, then that culture of performance pressure can, again, everything is linking back to anxiety. It's all things that are going on within your mind. And ultimately, the fear of disappointing other people, realizing that you might let them down, you might not meet their own expectations, linking back to your own self-esteem and your own self-worth. You might think, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I don't deserve to be loved, I'm hated by everybody. And that is going to play havoc with your mindset. So we need to pull ourselves away from that performance pressure. I'm not saying don't have high expectations. Again, have the highest expectations of yourself to the point where, people in the crowd, your parents, your partner, your family, your friends, your teammates, none of them are going to have higher expectations of you than you already have yourself. You are the only person you are ever going to let down. If you see it that way, you will develop, and you'll claim more control over your own situation. Those feelings of anxiety will calm down, the waters there will settle, and you'll be able to clear your mind and have that headspace to be able to perform and to be able to execute. Again, I'll go back to the phrase that I have used previously myself, where I've gone onto the field and I've gone, fuck it, just kick it. Or I've got another trigger phrase, which is just trust your technique. And ultimately, it's all about settling down into a rhythm where you are not thinking. You want to have a switch that you can flip where you will switch off from all the things that are going on, the situation, your mindset just goes, oh, not going to think anymore, just going to rely on my skill set. You work through that, and that performance pressure goes away. That pressure is only ever something that you're experiencing and thinking about whilst you're actually thinking, if that makes sense. So if you can switch off and tune out of that and just put yourself in a little bit of it, like I'll always go back to me kicking because it's so easy for me to kind of get through in my own head and actually think about this. But the situation I have, obviously, there are so many circumstances which can come into play. The weather, whether it's windy, rainy, wet, there are 11 guys on the opposite side of the ball coming to try and block it. There's the crowd, the atmosphere, potentially the occasion. Yeah, I'll go back to this, but reputation, my own reputation, it's embarrassing to miss a field goal. It's fucking horrendous. Like I said, as soon as you kick it, if you get it wrong, you just want it back straight away. You want to be able to get a rope around the ball and go, no, please come back here, pull it back, put it down again, have another go, because you only get one shot. And it's that disappointment of having to walk off the field, head down, like know that you've let your teammates down again, all these things that I've already mentioned. And ultimately, you could think about all that. And if you did think about that, it would be fucking crippling. It would be absolutely horrendous. If you ran through that and played that through your mind every single time you're about to go out and execute a skill, or for me, if I was going to do that every single time I was about to go and kick, I'd be a complete mess. So simplifying it, say, fuck it, just kick it, makes it really, really easy. It blocks all of that out and it helps me frame where I am at that point in time, which is the process is mark my spot on the field. Please put the ball there, holder. The long snapper, I can't do anything about that. He's out of my control. He's too far away. I can't even see him. And this is the point. I'm looking at things that I can see, things that I can control. I can control myself relative to the holder, wherever he puts the ball. If I have to make adjustments, if I have to change my plant step, it might not be perfect every time. If it's a high snap, can I delay myself a little bit, slow myself down, and keep myself on rhythm with the holder? It's focusing on those little things in that box, which is 3 yards back, 2 yards across from the start of my run up to the spot of the ball. That's the box. There is nothing else outside of that, nothing else outside of that that is relevant, useful, or that matters. I have to trust that the long snapper is going to do his job. And then from there, it's about me and the holder making the adjustments we need to make, trusting that the line are going to do their jobs with their blocking, and then we're going to have the time away to get the kick out, and that ultimately my skill set as a kicker is solid enough and stable enough that the ball's going to travel straight, it's going to travel high, it's going to travel far, it's going to go through the post, and everyone's going to have a great time. So put things in that little box, in that small area, which is right in front of you and you can control. If you can do that, it will remove that performance pressure. I know I've gone quite deep on a couple of these and probably going into things that I'm going to end up repeating myself in the next episode, but I want to try and make that understandable. And hopefully that's coming through to you. So number 9, why people feel failure is that uncertainty and the unknown outcomes. So fear of the unknown, uncertainty about potential outcomes. When you can't predict or control the consequences of your actions, this is when you then will potentially hesitate to take risks or try new things. So again, excuse me, don't try and predict the future. Just focus on, how do I get the job done? How could I potentially influence things for the better? And if you understand that you're always trying things, taking some, say, calculated risks, it's going to increase your chances of not only being successful, but ultimately being better over a longer period of time. And what I would always say to anyone is take risks, because no matter where you are now, as long as you take those risks, they will accumulate over time. And eventually you will be able to pull off more and more and more. And those risks don't become risky anymore. They become safe, sound ways for you to be able to do your job and execute the skills. But you only get there by continuously trying it and developing it and pushing those boundaries. So do that. Don't worry about the outcome. Don't worry about the circumstances. Don't worry about the situation or the reaction off the back of it. Execute. And then the final one, why people might fear failure, are those cultural and social influences. So whether it's cultural values, family values, the messages that you get from society or team culture, those, your general upbringing is going to shape your attitude towards failure. You're either going to get the bull by the horns, dance with failure, or you're going to try and push it away, play safe, and avoid it at all costs, which isn't necessarily useful for high performance. Every single high performer will take risks, whether it's flagrant and ludicrous from time to time, or calculated, precise, predetermined. Everyone will do it. And as long as you're taking risks, the fear of failure and the reality of failure is always going to be there. So just embrace it. Fuck it. Get on with it. Just go. Develop a trigger that you're going to say to yourself, and then go and execute. Go and perform. So before, those are the 10 reasons there. Those are the 10 reasons why people fear failure. There's probably tons more, but this is what we're going to roll with for now. And in the next episode, I'm going to break these down. Before I leave you and leave you absolutely hanging, I'm going to give you a little bit of a summary on some of the things we're going to be talking about, but I will rattle through the list again first. So number 1, perfectionism. Number 2, self-esteem. Number 3, social comparison. Number 4, negative consequences. 5, lack of control. Number 6, fixed mindset. Number 7, negative reinforcement. Number 8, performance under pressure. Performance pressure. Number 9, uncertainty and unknown outcomes. And then number 10, because of social and cultural influences. And to subdue all these aspects of why you might fear failure. We need to develop self-awareness. We need to challenge negative beliefs, develop resilience, and develop a growth mindset as opposed to a fixed one. Set goals. And one of the things that people always say, set realistic goals. Fuck setting realistic goals. What is realistic? Is it realistic by someone else's measurement or is it realistic by your own? What's the point of a realistic goal? If you only set a realistic goal, you're just going to achieve a bog standard outcome. Have a growth mindset. If you've got I would say a boring, non-creative personality and you're using the goals of other people, it's a start. Ultimately, set a goal, but be audacious with it. Be a little bit outrageous. Be out there. Like if you want to play professional sport for a career, don't go and say, well, I want to play for a non-league football club. No, but like be childish with it. Be a little bit childish with your goal, but then be calculated once you've created that dream, that vision, that perspective. Like if you want to be rich and well off, don't just think, oh, well, I want to earn like 30, 40, 50 grand a year. Be fucking outrageous. Go, I want to earn 10 million quid a year, whatever it is. You want to play professional sport for a career, don't I want to play for a non-league team. No one grows up wanting to play for a non-league team, not for a career. Be the person that wants to play for the elite club. Be the person that wants to play for your national team. Be ambitious as fuck when it comes to setting your goals. Once you've done that, use a support network, develop develop a close circle of people that you know you can trust 100% with anything. Don't have loads of people clinging on and then trust them with everything because you can't do that. Have a really tight, close circle, people you can trust. Have a coach, have a physio, have a partner, have a group of people around you that you can trust implicitly with anything. And then use that network as much as you can, as much as you need to. Rely on them, especially when time gets like rely on them when things are good and things are great, and then rely on them even more when it's difficult. The next one, reframe failure. Don't see it as shit, fucked up. That's the end of it. Go, right, here's an opportunity to get better. See it as a learning experience and essentially training, not inadequacy. Remember, the goal is to have a long-term career over the course of 10, 15, 20 years and not just be excellent now. Be excellent for a prolonged period of time. That is ultimately high performance. That will leave it there for now. I will cover more of these in a bit more detail in the next episode in part 2 when we go and address how to overcome failure. I know I've already talked about it quite a bit, but I will summarize it. I'll try and boil it down a bit neater than I have done today and leave you with some more high performance tips. If you've enjoyed this podcast, if you found it useful, hopefully you have, please, please, please share it. Get other people listening to it. Get questions sent in to me. If you want to get in touch with me, find me on social media, find me on Instagram, drop me a DM. Ultimately, if you want to work with me, if you want to find out more about how you can stretch your performance and improve yourself, then let's get on with that. Let's have a talk about that straight away. Until next time, that is it from me. Lenko out.